showtime. We are live and directly. And happy Friday. We made it, George.
We made it.
We made it. Listen.
Yeah. Hallelujah.
Okay, because there are plenty of people who could not make it. So happy Friday. Happy Friday. As y'all come in, y'all know what to do. Let me know where y'all are tuning in from. Happy Friday. Welcome to another Relationship Friday. And listen, I know it's been a while since we've been here, but we here. Last month we came on, and the month before that. So once a month we are coming on, and we are talking all things relationships. So today we're doing it a little bit different. This is a unique conversation that I'm really actually excited to have because we're talking about the relationships that fathers have with their sons. And I have a very special guest with me today, as you all could see, George Ennels. And so, George, am I pronouncing that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I'd say it like Reynolds without the R,
Okay.
So
Okay. Excellent. So, as y'all see, I have a very special guest. He's also a licensed clinical social worker. So, we're going to get started. But before we do, I'm wanting to, y'all know how we do. Go ahead. Let me know where you're tuning in from, but share this, like, share, and subscribe. I think I said it right. My team is always telling me I have to invite the people, George, to like, share, and subscribe. We're also on YouTube, and on YouTube, I want you to hit the subscribe button and make sure that you get notified whenever we're going to go live. So go ahead and do that. We're on Instagram. Follow us there as well. And make sure that tonight's live that you share that. So go ahead, tag a father, tag a mother, tag a son, because I want y'all to come in here. I want us to talk about the relationship that fathers have with their sons, and not just the relationships that they have, but what it's looking like. How are fathers raising their sons? So we're going to talk about that. So go ahead and invite. I'm going to do it right now. I always tell y'all to invite and share. So I'm going to stop right now, and I'm going to share this live. So y'all give me 1 second to do that, because I asked y'all to do it. And how am I going to ask you to do it and not do it myself, right? So I'm going to do this right now. And as y'all come in, y'all do the same. All righty. Okay. George, have you heard of Therapy for Black Men?
no,
I'm going to share some of their material today. They, first off, I don't know who the owner is, but they are dope. They have delicious content, and I love it. It's geared for men. And so I'm going to share some of their information, some of their quotes that they had.
okay.
Um, so I want to definitely do that. All right. So without further ado, I want to introduce my special guest, George. He is a fellow social worker. And I just want to give you a brief overview of who he is and what he is able to help you with in case you're in need. So, George, as I said, is a licensed clinical social worker, and he received his degree from the, what they say, the mighty, let me stop.
Spartans.
The Spartans. Behold, he is
And gold.
he is a fellow Spartan, graduated from Norfolk State University and got his license in clinical social work there. And from there has been doing a lot of great work, working with individuals that are dealing with mental and emotional health. But he's been doing this for a long time. So he is very skilled, and has been working in the field for a very long time. Now, he's able, he provides consulting services as well. And so if you or your agency are looking for someone who is a licensed individual who knows what they're talking about when it comes to um, mental and emotional health issues for men, women, um, and children, this is your person. He is able to train and provide information about stress management and relaxation, about crisis intervention, about grief issues, behavioral treatment. So, for individuals, for couples, for businesses rather, that are looking for someone who has the expertise in these fields, reach out, connect. George is in the building. Right now, he is doing individual therapy. He works with men primarily and is helping them to get themselves all together. So we are very, very excited to have you come on. Thank you very much, George, for taking your time and being willing to share your knowledge, your expertise, but also your thoughts and your opinions, especially as a man, as a Black man. So thank you, thank you, thank you very much. Welcome. And what might you want to add or say to it before we hop into it?
Well, only that my experience has been doing some crisis emergency work as an emergency clinician, well, for emergency work, you get a variety of individuals coming in with various crises. So I was a emergency services supervisor for about 10 years, and
Wow.
then I moved to being a director. So as a director, it's a very different role. You know, you're working with staff that actually are doing the work. And so that changes your role to more of an administrative role. So I did the mental health director role for about 15 years. So I have a variety of experiences, both clinical and administrative, that really help me to be able to do the work that I do.
Mhm. And I think that's an excellent point that you're making, because even as individuals or agencies are looking for a consultant, right? You are a great fit because you're able to understand the dynamics from both ends of things, and so you are able to kind of give them feedback about, hey, these are some things you might want to consider, or from the administrative position, the points that they need to be thinking about. So, as well as how to support your staff, how to
Yeah.
train them, how to get them where they need to be. So,
Yeah.
listen,
Yes.
this is your guy. Okay, his contact
I
information.
have done some consulting with some agencies across the Virginia, and and they always come to me with what challenges they have, and most challenges I've had some experience with, so it's easy for me to be able to help.
Yes. Yep. Yep, I love it. I love it. His contact information is provided, so feel free to reach out to him and to book his services. He's gonna get you all the way right, and he's got a great personality, so he works well with all populations, and you will definitely enjoy working with him. All
I
right.
appreciate that.
Yes, 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 yes. All right. So I want to start off. So there was a video that we saw. And when I saw it, oh Lord.
Triggered her. That's what it did. It triggered her. We'll talk about triggers later on.
So I definitely noticed that it hit a soft spot for me. And I was curious. I was looking at the comments, and I saw a wide range of responses to how this, I'm going to say father, I'm not sure if this was his father or his coach, but y'all will see the video. But there was, I'm just going to kind of set up the video for y'all, and then we'll go right into it. But there was a young boy, probably, George, how old would you say the
I
boy?
say about 9, 10 years ago, something like
Okay. So maybe between about 8, 9, 10 years old. Um, and there was an individual. You never see the individual, but you can hear from the voice that it's a man. Maybe it's his coach, maybe it's his father, not quite sure. And so I want you all to watch. the interaction. I want you to listen. I want you to hear what's being said. And George and I are going to hop into it and kind of talk about what's happening, what, and as we're going along. So sometimes we do polls, but as we're going along, I want y'all to think about as you're watching, what was the intent here, right? Like, what do you think the father was, or the man was trying to do? Maybe to teach what lessons, what do you think the intent was? And then George and I are going to talk from a clinical perspective on things, about the impact of parenting, how we parent, why, and things like that. So I'm going to share my screen and let us. And y'all let me know if you can hear.
Pick your head up. Pick your bat up. Stand in the house. Find your technique. Do it again. Do it again. Find your piece. You think anybody cares that it hurts? Nobody cares. Who cares? And that means you can control it.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. So George, seeing this video, and I know you and I have had a chance to watch it and kind of talk about it. And I know you mentioned there were, after watching it or seeing it again, maybe other things kind of came up for you. So let's go there. Your thoughts. You see this, what are your thoughts?
Okay. I noticed you said that it could be as a parent or that it could be a coach or something like that. So let's just say that for the sake of thoughts, that's a parental figure, somebody who is an authority, who is telling this child to do what he told him to do. Mm-hmm. Just remember, now, in terms of being a person's parent, we have to remember that parents always do what they think is the best thing for their children. Mm-hmm. Well, most parents do. Some don't, but most parents do, and that they are doing something that they are taught.
Yeah.
It's usually a parent has a repertoire of information from when they were raised to when they become adults that have given them a variety of ways of understanding parenting and managing parenting. Yeah. Remember, none of them have been parents before. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes people think they just know how to parent. Yeah. Or they know how to mentor, or they know how to do something that they have not done before. And what I find that in therapy with a lot of people is that they think they know something. And remember, you're in your own brain. Yes. And your brain thinks you know something. You ain't got nobody to say, no, that's not true. In that gap. Mm-hmm. And so you believe what you think. And you've seen that tag that says, don't always believe what you think. Because you're your only person in there, and you have no objective evidence to say anything against what you're thinking. So as a parent, we're doing the best we can. With that said, a lot of things happen in this video that are questionable. Some good, some not so good. And so what I observe is a parent trying to do something, trying to engage his child in a way that is going to do something that's going to help him in the future, but also unknowingly creating a challenge in his psyche and how he sees the world and how he manages things emotionally.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing that sets out is to deny your feelings.
Yeah.
And that is such an unhealthy way of being.
Yeah.
To be able to deny something that exists in you.
Yeah.
As a parent, you want to teach how to use your emotions in a healthy way, in a way that makes sense and that's reasonable, and that you have them, but you can manage them. So when I say that there's some things in the video that were good and not so good, I think that his attempt is to try to do that, to help him manage in a healthy way, to go into his gut and actually do something. So I like when he said, now take your stance, now hit the ball. So that actually takes the focus from the pain and actually helps him get through the process.
Mm-hmm.
However, in whatever we tell a child, it permeates to other situations in life and other circumstances. And so since it does that, he may move that over to another situation, which where that type of stance may not work.
Yeah. So I think this is really good what you're sharing, right? Which is, and I love the balanced approach. I think that's really important because I hear you hard.
Thank you.
I definitely hear your heart, which is, listen, I see what this person is trying to do. They are trying to help their young son recognize that, hey, pain might happen, but you don't have to allow it to take you over. You don't have to allow it to control you. And then I hear the other side, though, which is nobody's a perfect. So let me back up. Nobody's a perfect parent.
Right.
And you do what you either have seen role modeled a lot of times, and you kind of redo what it is that you've seen, and you do better. You do what you can do until you can do better or differently. And so there may be times when we are doing things, especially as parents, especially if you love your parent, right? You're not going to purposely try to hurt your child. No. However, there are times where we may be doing things and we have to revisit what we're doing, the impact that it may be having. And so this is why I want us to have this conversation. And right now we're looking at fathers and their relationships, only specifically though, because the title, and I want to go back because I want to show this really quickly. I want us to see what the title said. It says it's a big difference when a man raises a boy. Okay. So the person who, kind of posted this obviously felt like this was the type of parenting. This was how you handle pain. This is how you parent. Like this is that one, there's a difference between how a man raises a child and a woman. But also the emphasis, it kind of seems, was that this was the better way to parent. Now that was my takeaway, but when you look at that title, kind of what comes to mind, how do you take it?
Well, I actually had a lot of thoughts about that because there are healthy parenting styles and there are unhealthy parenting styles. And remember, your repertoire of where you get your parenting style from is from your experience. So your experience could be the way your parents parented you, or it could be something you see, or it could be something that you read, or it could be something that you understand about the world, or it could be you reacting to something your parents did. Oh, they did this to me. I ain't gonna never do that to my child, and end up doing it anyway. Sometimes. Or I would never do this, but end up doing something that they say they would never do. Or to wake up one day and realize that they're doing something that they wish they hadn't have done. you know. But we can't get so much in our heads about that. We have to be parents, and we have to go with what we know. We just have to be able to say in our psyches that we don't know everything. And Rachel and I were talking about a guru who said that you have to be comfortable with the things that you don't know, because you can live 100 lifetimes and not know everything you do know. You just have to be aware when there's something that you may not know. And there's always additional things you might know. Might have a repertoire of things that you do know, but there are always additional things that you can learn, or you can do something in a different way. Yeah. Different children act differently depending on who they are as human beings, and how they are biologically and psychologically, and whatever. Some kids have a slight bit of autism, or some kids. So you treat each child based on who that child is. Yeah. And if you don't understand that, you'll want to treat them in the way that you've learned, and they may need to be treated some other way.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point as well. George, take me to the place of what you are thinking this man was trying to teach, to role model. By the kid is obviously in pain, and instead of acknowledging the pain, he ignores it, and tells the kid, come on, let's get back to doing the baseball. What was he trying to teach? What do you think the lesson, what was he trying to do?
I think he was trying to toughen the kid up, and try, because the world can be a cruel place. He wanted to make sure that regardless of pain, he could get back on track and do what he needed to do in terms of, the baseball. But like I said, this permeates into other aspects of life, because he's denying a feeling. And that kid, if you looked at that film, that kid obviously was in serious pain. He was hurting.
Yeah.
And what you have to think about is, okay, what if this kid was in serious emotional pain, and that pain is never acknowledged or never not recognized,
yeah,
and managed in a way that would be effective for the kid,
yeah,
not for the parent, but that managed in a way that's effective for the kid. So that might be one of those gap things that you don't know as a parent. Yeah. How do I handle my child's pain?
Yeah.
And you might do it differently.
And I think that's a really good point that you're bringing up, because when we talk about this idea of trying to toughen him up, right? I want us to kind of go there just a little bit. This idea of, and when y'all come in, I'm sorry, I haven't been saying it. When y'all come in, let us know where you are tuning in from. Hello and welcome, Maxwell. Maxwell's in the building. We are talking about the relationship that fathers have with their sons specifically. And in this video, we clearly see where a father appears to be, again, this is us kind of guesstimating, but it appears that the father is trying to toughen the son up because he does not acknowledge the pain initially. And the pain happens. The boy is clearly in a lot of distress.
I was jumping up and
I mean, like, yeah. So when we are thinking about this idea of toughening up the son, did he succeed? And then let's kind of talk about how this kind of parenting, and you kind of started on it, but what does this create? What does this, so did he succeed in this moment? And even if you fast forward, right? Because if this is the messaging that your pain, get over it. The other thing he said was, when he did acknowledge the boy's pain, well, actually, he didn't acknowledge it. He said, all right, find your peace, which.
Well, that was one of the things I said, that's kind of a little bit of a strength thing there. You find your peace, and if maybe he went back and talked about what that was, and how to center yourself again when you're doing that activity. All of us know if we're preparing for like studying or doing a task and something distracts us, we have to get on track. We have to be able to acknowledge whatever's going on, say that we need to put that in a place, and then get back to the task at hand. So I think that's what he was trying to do. He was very insensitive in the process, because you can do the same thing in a sensitive way. And so the boy acknowledges his feelings. Oh, I do have feelings, I'm hurt and pain, but I know I got to get back on track, and I'm okay with that. Did you think this kid was okay with getting back on track? He was like, I'm hurt, but I'm going to do what my daddy says, So, but not really acknowledging the fact that of what happened. Something did happen, and to act as though something didn't happen is denial. And denial is a very unhealthy defense mechanism when it comes to your growth and your future. So you deny things, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah. I think the other thing too that kind of comes up as well and is after this find your peace, which I'm still not quite sure what that meant, but I can appreciate, hey, okay, all right, what's now? And it seemed like at that point, the child was able to say that hurt. When the child expressed his hurt, the next thing that the dad did was say, do you think anybody who cares?
Right. Who cares?
So, and then the boy says, I do. And the daddy like, don't nobody, you do, but don't nobody else. Like, what impact might that have on a child? The messaging, what is the messaging that's being sent? So we understand that the dad was trying to maybe teach your child to be resilient, not to allow pain to just kind of stop you from doing any and everything that you need to do, which I think are really important points. But I think you make a really good points as well from a clinical standpoint, which is it can be done in a different way. And we'll talk more about how it can, because this way is actually detrimental because you're teaching the son to ignore your pain and keep going, which is what many of our men and men of color have been conditioned to do and are struggling. So when the kid says, hey, I'm hurt, the pain isn't acknowledged. And then when the pain is acknowledged, the response is, don't nobody care but you. How might that impact? What messaging does that send to like this?
Well, first of all, to me, it makes as Black men, we've struggled always through time, through especially slavery time and sometime before that, of being invisible.
Okay.
Like we don't matter, and our feelings don't matter, and what we think doesn't matter, and it just permeates our whole beings and makes us become something that sits deep in our psyches and destroys some of our dreams, hopes, dreams, some of the realities of the world where you could be successful. But if you think you can't, there are certain things you won't try, certain things you won't attempt because you really think that, you don't matter. And so what the dangerous thing in this video is that he is denying everything, denying that he has feelings and almost that he doesn't exist. The only thing that matters is the fact that he needs to hit this ball.
Let's get this baseball.
Really, as a parent, we have to accept our children the way they are, the way they come to us, with whatever strengths and weaknesses they have, and reinforce those things that are their strengths. And we have to constantly reinforce their strengths so they feel a sense of empowerment and that they can go in the world and do things in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're destroying their self-esteem. I was going to say their little self-esteem. But you know what I mean. We're destroying whatever internal strengths that they may have.
That, so even from thinking about over the years working with men, specifically women too, but specifically men who have been parented this way, this idea of tough love, especially in the Black community, really centers around the belief that if you show emotions, then you are weak.
Right.
And that showing emotions is weakness. That equation, the math ain't mathing. And
Right.
so when you parent your child this way, it really does create that false narrative that one, to show emotions, to express emotions is weak, and that you, I think the other piece too was that if this is the father should be a safe enough space for the son to be able to express his hurt, his pain. And if your father, because the role of the father is to protect and to give identity. And so when the father is not protecting, is not, so in essence, and I think you hit it right on the head, this idea of you're invisible. The father didn't protect. The father's like, boy, be quiet, ain't nothing wrong with, in a sense he's not saying that, but that's the
Right.
messaging, that your pain is not important, that your performance, and this is the other thing that I really work with my men on, is recognizing that your value does not come from what you do, what you have. But when you are parented this way, it begins to create what we call harmful core beliefs. And you begin to equate your value, your worth, your esteem with what you can do. So you're in pain, that don't matter. Let's get this. Let's get this performance.
Mhm.
Let's get the baseball going. Even though I could recognize and I can appreciate what dad intended.
Yes. And Rachel, it's what we don't want to do is make sure is that it be black and white.
Mm,
There, you do have to teach kids how to be resilient.
yes.
It's number one. It's not so much what you're trying to do; it's how you're doing it.
Yes.
No, so you remember, if you're doing something to the child that is affecting their psyche, that's deep, and that's going to affect them later on in terms of how they think about themselves, that's where you have to be careful.
Yeah.
And parents don't walk around saying, I'm trying to destroy my child's psyche. I want them to be resilient. I want them to be, they don't do that.
Yeah.
But as parents, you have to be, it's a raising of your own consciousness of how what you do as a parent is impacting that child.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, right? That's a great point, that one is not black and white, but two, there is that balance of, yes, any moment is a teachable moment.
Yes.
And we want to teach resilience, but we also want to make sure that we're not damaging this child's psyche. How, George, do you think this could have been handled in a way that did both, right? Acknowledge the boy's pain, allowed him to express himself and feel safe doing so, empowered to do so, but still teach the resilience piece of things.
Well, it probably could be done a number of different ways. The first way is when he first hit that bat and started jumping up and down. Just acknowledgement of, I am so sorry that happened to you. I'm sorry that you're in pain. But we have to get back up here and do this. Are you hurt? Are you hurt? And he might have busted his hand. It could have been a number of things that could have happened.
Yeah.
You're like, no, I don't care what you did. Your hand broke. You still gonna get up here and hit this bat. So it's just, you have to be, as a parent, you have to be sensitive enough that you care about the well-being of your child first.
Yeah. Yep.
And then you move to, okay, now we can get back to what we need to do. So we can back away from something that we're doing, take care of it, and then get refocused and move back into something that is going to help us through life. We're going to be focused. We're going to we're going to do something. But just that direct denial of something that is just pain
Yeah.
is pain. And I always think that was physical pain. Physical pain is one thing, but emotional pain is another. And denying that can be a little bit more challenging. So what we're thinking about here is what's going on consciously. Consciously, he's trying to do something. He's trying to help his child.
Yeah.
But with the kid, unconsciously, he might be sending a message. That message might be, your pain is not important. Your pain doesn't matter. Your only thing matters is what you achieve and accomplish. And that's a message that she doesn't really want to do. Like I said, as parents, we're trying to do the best we can with our children, and we don't intentionally do this. But we have to be conscious that we might be doing this in the way we are handle our parenting style.
Yeah, that is a very important point. And one of the reasons why I wanted us to have this conversation is to help parents, right? We're not here to tear parents down.
No, you're not.
You do what you think, right? I don't, there to me was not this parent trying to be malicious,
Hmm.
right? I think this was a parent that had good intentions. He understands the dog eat dog world that is out here.
Right.
I think he came from that place, and a part of that is, was fear, that I don't want my son, maybe taken advantage of or not knowing how to handle things, so let me toughen him up. But
Right.
the points that you're making is really important, and I really want parents, especially fathers, to recognize that you can engage with your son. It's not weak, and there's nothing wrong with engaging with your son in a loving manner that teaches him resilience, but also teaches him the importance of caring for self.
Hmm.
What do you
Caring for self, yes, caring for self. And how it impacts that child is that in the future, if performance is the only measure of who I am,
hmm
then have to perform. I'm not going to use my emotions in my performance. I'm not going to use my anything related to
Yep.
emotion or energy that way. It's just how I perform.
Yep.
And repressed emotions lead to a lot of things. It leads to depression. It leads to internal anxiety that you carry around. Because my only thought is, I got to be great. I got to perform,
hmm
and that's a unnecessary anxiety that they'll carry throughout life. If I can't perform, I'm not going to be any good. I'm not going to their self esteem.
Value.
That's right. Your value is attached to just performance and not who you are.
Yeah.
Parents should love their kids unconditionally.
hmm
That means whether he performed well um, on the baseball court or not.
Yeah.
It's unconditional love. So you love them whether they do well, and you love them when they don't.
Yeah. I want to bring up a quote that therapyforblackmen.org. And when I saw this, I thought this was so appropriate for what we're talking about, which is how Black men specifically are developed. And it starts with how they're raised, how their needs are met or are not met, their pain when they express themselves, right? What they are taught. And over time, it creates belief systems. Over time, it creates how they operate, how they engage with other people. A lot of times when I do my couples therapy, many of the men struggle when it comes to communicating because they have been taught that if I share my feelings, then I'm going to be looked at as weak. And that messaging has been taught in instances like this, right? So, one of the posts that he put on, I'm just going to read it. A few reasons why the man or the men in your life struggle to ask you for help is because he's been socially conditioned to associate seeking support in any capacity with shame and weakness. He fears being misunderstood. When he asks for help, he is made to feel like a burden. He fears being penalized for being honest about what he needs. He does not feel emotionally safe. He fears that he will appear broken and needy. So, those are just and then the last part, we are witnessing more and more men and boys taking their lives because they can't face the shame of speaking up to ask for help. So when they're in pain, they're not going to express it because they've been taught, suck it up. Don't
Right.
nobody care.
Right. Right. Don't nobody care. Suck it up. um, and um, and we can't talk about some. Well, okay. As a child is it grows and becomes a man and is able to understand and see the world and through his own eyes.
Yeah.
Um, there are conscious and unconscious things going on. So those messages that they got when they were a child
Yeah.
that permeate their psyche uh, it stays with them as they become adults. And remember, it impacts how we relate to other people, how we react in relationships, how we engage women.
Yes.
It's all in there. And
Let's talk about
something
that
to
too.
my clients is it doesn't matter what happens to us because everybody when we had some trauma and everybody has been abused and
Yeah.
it's been a lot of that going on. It's not so much that happening to us as we become adults. It's how we manage what happens to us. So do we manage it through healthy ways of getting more information about it and being able to navigate it in a little bit different way? Are we communicating in healthy ways to healthy people that can give us a reasonable response? Are we getting therapy? One of the reasons I went into doing therapy with black men is because there are not enough black male therapists out here,
Yeah.
and I think we have the same rights and privileges of everybody else. And I think when they go to other therapists, they're often seen as they often have challenges with those therapists because they can't relate to a lot of the black male experience. And so I guess what I'm saying is that because it impacts all aspects of life, we give ourselves credit for living through whatever we went through, abuse and neglect, all those kinds of things. But then you come to a place where you say, "Oh, I'm going to deal with some of this baggage that I've dealt with, and so how am I going to deal with that baggage?" And then the challenge is exploring what things are in the world. I'm not saying that you have to get therapy, but I'm just saying that whatever's out there that gives you a healthy way of managing something, you explore for that, you reach for that, and that makes you a healthier individual overall.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think, when we are talking about this idea of one, taking responsibility for things that may have happened to you as a child, as an
Right.
adult, right? Whether it's getting therapy, whether it's addressing it, working through it, whatever it is, um, we definitely, as therapists, we encourage you to get the help,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because I think it is important to recognize that the trauma that you talk about, right? This idea that you have been taught, and by taught, it may not always have been someone sitting you down and saying this, but how you're treated, what you see, all of that is messaging. So all of that is you being taught. And so over time, you may have been taught that it was not manly to express yourself, to acknowledge pain, to say I'm hurt, to say I need help. And so that has permeated your life. You have been walking around with that ideology. That's how the show has been run.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you've been doing it. And everywhere you are going, it's impacting you, how
Mm-hmm.
you show up in your relationships with your children, right? Because more
Mm-hmm.
than likely, this father, if his father was in his life, that's how his father engaged with him, or that's what he saw, right? And so,
So can I just want to comment on
Yeah,
something?
yeah.
Um, so in your psyche, that's a whole it's a whole ball game that's going on in the back of your head.
Okay.
You don't know nothing about. Well, you know a little bit about it because it's going in there, but there's so much going on in the back of your head that you're trying to manage. So what I say is everything in the back of your head is in the back of your head, and it ain't in nobody else's head. And whether right or wrong, you're gonna say I'm right.
Yeah.
And that's the unhealthy thing. You might think you're right
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, and you might be right sometimes. You ain't wrong all the time. Nobody's wrong all the time. But when you have those challenging moments where you have to engage your spouse or you have to engage your children in a healthy way, that's the times you really want to get outside your own head and ask the question. Don't be caught up in that manly role so much that you believe something has to happen in a certain way. I have to be this to be a man. I have to do this to be a man. In order to teach my son to be tough, I got to do this or that or the other. It's the ability to look at that thought and to back away from that. Is there a better way? Is it a healthier way that I can teach my child? Or is there a healthier way for me to be a man? And if it is, it's going to make your life easier. All those things that you said that a man thinks they have to be or they think they have to do. 99, well, I ain't gonna say 99. I'll say 80% of those things they don't have to do. You don't have to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
You can make a decision to do something that's good for you and that's good for your psyche, but you don't have to do anything.
Yeah. Talk about the cultural influences, right? This men and men of color feeling as if I got to talk more about how that plays a role, how the cultural norms or societal norms impact how men are thinking they have to be.
Yes. Okay. So I was reading this article the other day, and it was really about the history of the Black psyche. And we have to remember what has happened to us in our history. We came across the ships. We didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
We were put in shackles and just brought here. And the goal of certain people, slave owners, was to diminish us and to make us not think for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the backdrop of where we began, how our existence began. Then we began to learn things and understand the world in a different way and realize that we are human beings too, and that we have value and we are smart and we are kings and we are queens, and there's so much about us that that they can't take it away. It's in our DNA, and so we come to today, and some of those ways that we had to be when we were in that role permeate themselves. And even today, when we talk about the police, what's going on with the police and everything, how we have to be in order for our survival.
Yeah.
And so you got, not only is our present current society that we live in, are we concerned about, well, we also are concerned about our past and how people see us and how they project
Yes.
on us. They project, images and thoughts that are just way out there, But we have to be in the mix of this and still live and be, a normal human being. So when you talk about culture, that's the culture that we're in, yeah, and have been in, that actually impacts how we think. So we might think that we have to be a certain way. And when in wider society, you couldn't be a certain way out in public, so you had to be a certain way at home. These are the things that made me a man at home because I couldn't be a man out in the public. So those kind of things that actually that we're dealing with. How we're dealing with it, how it sits in our psyche is that it's little bits and pieces of taking away that manhood, making it invisible. And how do we get that back? How do we as a man say, I'm not invisible, I do have a voice, I am here, I can think, I can figure some things out.
Yeah.
Let me do that.
Yeah.
You talked about how it impacts relationships and asking for help. You know, sometimes you start at a diminished level in terms of finances and that kind of stuff, and people usually that's where they feel diminished because they're not able to do some things that maybe in a moment.
Yeah.
All that is how you perceive it. You know, in a moment they're not able to carry something, and then to ask for help in that moment when they need it. You know, it's really a challenge. And then they feel like that something's wrong with them, that they should be able to do this when they have all the challenges of society that may be against them.
George, those are, I mean, as you were speaking, I was very clearly hearing the point you were making about men living in a society that men of color living in a society where society at large is not treating them as if they can think, are valuable,
Mm-hmm.
asset to
Mm-hmm.
society. And we're talking really about their respect, like they are not respected. And to be living in that type of environment in order to thrive and survive, there is, you do have to learn how to navigate. And sometimes in those environments, you cannot let them see a soft side. Yeah, ain't no soft side here. I'm
Right.
about business, right? So
Right.
it is a challenge. And I
Mm-hmm.
want to acknowledge that it is a challenge specifically for our men of color to be able to navigate that and to have those defenses up and then know how to lower those shields when you come into contact in safe spaces with your family, your children, your spouse. And but it's unfair. It's not fair that our men have to have the shield go, you're out here in the world, so you got to have your armor on, and you're in. So just like our men that go out to battle, right? They have to be combat ready. Our military people,
Right.
there's a certain mindset that you have to have in order to go out there and be ready to handle war.
Right.
And then what's happening is we're expecting our men to come back out of the battle zone and to quickly be able to come back to, I'm a daddy. This is my child. This is my partner. They ain't trying to get me.
Right.
Be able to go back and forth like that. Man, that now you talking about damage to your psyche. It's all my heart goes out to our men because this is what they're having to navigate and work through. And our children are suffering, right? The household is suffering, and then the children go up to be men who feel like I got to always have the battle, got to always have this, can't express my pain, I
Mhm.
can't acknowledge it. What words would you say? What would you share with this father as a clinician? What would you say to this father? And then in our last 3 minutes, what would you say to this child?
Um, with the father, I would, if he came to ask me, did he do the right thing here? I would say, what you did has its strengths and its weaknesses. It's always about a balance,
Yeah.
you know. And, you know, I know the first thing I would say is we always try to do the best we can with our children. Just like we began this is how we are in. We always try to do the best we can. And I know you were doing the best you could with your child. However, we always want to consider whether or not there's a better way. And there are healthy ways to do things, you know, in terms of raising children, and there's some unhealthy things. And I might review with him some of what those healthy ways are versus some of the unhealthy ways.
Mhm.
Diminishing a child's ability to acknowledge their pain is not a healthy way to help them to manage.
Yeah.
That's clear. And especially when they have pain where they're jumping up and down and they're screaming, you know, because you don't know what happened. You haven't engaged the child enough to figure out what happened. Let's resolve that, and then we can move back to something that you want the child to get. So it's not that balance. So it's not saying we don't want your child to be tough. We do want your child to be tough because they got a world out here that they have to navigate. But it's teaching your child how to navigate that world in a way that makes sense, that they will be safe. That's why you have the talk, and that they'll be able to do it in a way that makes sense for them, and they will be comfortable and have feelings as they do that.
Yeah. I think the other thing too, I love the word that you use, resilient, right? Because, a lot of times we hear this idea of be tough, tough, tough. And sometimes that can kind of go to the whole other side of things. So resilient, we want your child to be well-rounded, adjusted. And I think all of us as parents want our children to be well-rounded and adjusted, meaning that they can, when things come up, it doesn't take them out. They can manage. They know how to balance, how to manage their emotions, and how to kind of work through things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that's important. Hello, welcome, Edwina. Um, what would you say? And if y'all have any questions, comments, feel free now to put it in here. If you have any questions or comments about that video, let us know. What would you say to the child, George?
Okay, so it depends on how the child comes to me,
Okay.
and what the circumstances are. But if I had the child in therapy,
Yeah.
and the child said, Daddy didn't acknowledge my daddy didn't even acknowledge anything. He just made me go. So if he's that age, I want to do something age appropriate. If he's older and saying my father didn't acknowledge my pain, I'm going to do something different. So it depends on what age he is. But what I would want him first to understand is that your father is doing the best he can with you. Because you definitely don't want to diminish the father and who he is. So I would say he's doing the best he can. He was trying to help you. And then I might talk about, okay, well, what happened? And I would help him acknowledge his pain in that moment. And then what his father needed from him afterwards. And so that's kind of how I would work with him, depending on what he says, I would try to work with him.
I love that.
In discussion, he will acknowledge his pain. He'll get that out. He's like, I was hurting, I was crying, I was jumping up and down, and Daddy didn't even he didn't say nothing. He said, get back up there and hit that back. So what are you feeling in that moment? Okay, so, and so as an adult, though, I would teach him that, as an adult, you don't have to deal with that kind of pain anymore. You can acknowledge your own pain, and you can decide how you want to deal with that. So it's just different, depending on what age they are.
Those are really key points, which is helping him to acknowledge his pain, not diminishing the father, right? Still trying to value the father, because fathers have value.
Oh,
You
yes.
y'all play such significant roles, not just in the life of your sons, but in the life of your daughters as well. And so, fathers, we commend you all, especially those of you who are out here trying to raise your sons and your daughters. We, as therapists, especially as therapists of color, because we recognize how things impact long term, like we understand the impact of things. We want to make sure that we are, and I'm going to speak for me here. I think I feel like you would agree as well. But
Mhm.
I feel a sense of responsibility, right? Like as I learn, I am required to teach, and especially in my community, because we therapy and cognitive distortions and psyche, man, that was for the birds. As a matter of fact, when I before I got into this field, I was like, man, if y'all don't get out of here talking that, I didn't believe. I thought it was like, yeah, this is some old fake made up stuff. Y'all messing with people's heads and stuff. But
Yes.
it wasn't until I got into the field and started learning and seeing what it is that I
Mhm.
really recognized the importance of people of color specifically starting to relook at some of what we've been doing, because we've been traumatized. You hit it over the head, man.
Mhm.
When we look at this, and I forget the lady's name who talks about post-traumatic slave disorder. There
Oh,
is still a lot of that trauma that we carry intergenerationally. We're still dealing with it, and it comes out in these forms of how we're parenting our children. And
right.
so being open to changing what we're doing, looking at what we're doing, and identifying things that are, like you said, unhealthy, and being willing to either get the help for it, get the help you need. That's where it's at. There ain't no get the help you need if you are you're struggling in that area.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly. Let me. I got. You can let me know in terms of time
yeah,
how.
we're about to wrap it up. If you have whatever the last thing is that you want to say, go right
Well,
ahead.
I want to say something about trauma.
Oh yes.
What you mentioned was intergenerational trauma, and then you have a trauma that happens in your family and stuff. And trauma is something that gives us anxiety, it makes us depressed, we carry it with us. Um, and what it usually does to us is make us overreact to whatever situations that may come up. We just overreact.
Yeah.
The key with therapy is helping us to moderate our overreaction. You're gonna overreact. That's just, if you've had trauma, you're gonna overreact. It's just normal.
Mhm.
But it's the ability to moderate back to something that is normal, to be able to think rationally about what is going on with you, and then to be able to ground yourself and then make a decision about whatever circumstances rather than reacting at that moment of reaction, that moment of overreaction.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I just want to say that because there are ways of managing this in a healthy way. We just have to learn what those ways are and actually move forward with them.
Yes, I love it. I love it. This has been another great conversation. Thank y'all for tuning in and taking part in the conversation. George, thank you for taking part and sharing your wisdom, your insight, your knowledge. If you all are looking to connect with George, if you feel like, hey, I need to have him come to my organization, my agency, and get us right. He does consulting. He's been in the role of administration all the way down to, well, not down, but he has the gamut from the clinical as well as the administrative side of things. And so he's able to kind of bring a lot of expertise in those areas to help you, your agency grow, develop. And just like what we've been talking, if you need training, if you need support, ask for it. When you know better, you do better, and we want to help you do better. So, thank you all for joining and tuning into another Relationship Friday that is hosted by RDH Counseling and Consulting, where we help you become your healthiest self and perform well. Thank y'all. We'll see you next month. It's been real. Let me get my look, George. We gotta get our to go music.
Oh, yes.
It's been real. I hope y'all stay safe and have a great weekend. Take care of yourself.